This movie is for Learning Target 10, Graph and Write Linear Equations. So here we have ski resorts often use steepness to rate the difficulty of their hills. The steeper the hill, the higher the difficulty rating. So black diamonds are very difficult. And so you can see how slope is related to that. A steady slope, not very steep, is going to be an easy, a red or a green. And then you have intermediate, and a black diamond is going to be a very steep slope. That's an application of slope. Slope is our change in y over our change in x. That's how we find slope. We call it rise over run. So if I'm finding the slope between 2 points, I see how much I need to rise and how much I need to run to the right or left. So rise is up is positive, down is negative, and run is left is negative, right is positive. We have a negative slope will be a decreasing line, positive slope is an increasing line, and if we have a vertical line, the slope is undefined. If we have a horizontal line, the slope is 0. Now slope, you could also use the formula. If you've got 2 points, it's y2 minus y1, which is where we get the change in y, over x2 minus x1, which is where we get the change in x. So pause the movie, try graphing a line with each of the following slopes, and then press play when you are finished. A slope of -1 is -1 over 1. That tells me to go down 1 to the right 1. So at any point that I start out, if I go down 1 to the right 1, I get a line that's decreasing with a slope of -1. Let's look at this line. 3 is 3 over 1. That tells me to go up 3 to the right 1. So if I start at this point and I go up 3 to the right 1, up 3 to the right 1, up 3 to the right 1, I get this line. 1 over 5 tells you to go up 1 to the right 5. So if I go up 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, notice it's just random where I am placing my starting point because all I need is a slope. And then I've got -2/3, which means down 2 to the right 3. So any point that I start with, down 2 to the right 3, down 2 to the right 3, I get this line. That's slope. Slope of a line can tell you many things. Positive slope increasing, negative slope decreasing, slope of 0, horizontal, undefined slope vertical. To help you remember these, we have Hoy, Vux, which tells you horizontal lines, has a slope of 0, and its y equals a number for the equation. Vertical lines have a slope, starts with a u, undefined, and it has x equals a number as an equation. That's a good way to help remember which slope goes with which kind of line. Forms of linear equations. We can take an equation and write it in several different forms. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. Standard form is another form that we probably remember from Algebra 1. It is ax plus by equals c. A and b cannot both be 0. A, b, and c need to be integers, and a cannot be negative. Now a new form is called point-slope form. This is a form that you will be using in pre-calc. Point-slope form is a form that you will definitely see in pre-calc. This uses a point, the point being x1, y1, and a slope, slope being m. Given a point and a slope, you can put it into this form. Y minus y1 equals m times the quantity x minus x1. So given a point and a slope, you can put it directly into point-slope form, and then you can solve it, change it into slope-intercept form, change it into standard form. Not solve it, just rewrite it, change it into those forms, equivalent forms. And it's a good transition form, point slope form. Let's go to this equation. We're going to graph y equals negative 2/3 x minus 6. This is my y-intercept. This is my slope. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Negative 6, I go down 2 to the right 3, down 2 to the right 3, or up 2 to the left 3, and I get my line. So that's graphing that equation. It's in point slope form, so it's nice and easy. There's a couple ways you can deal with this equation. We could change it. y minus 4 equals 2 times x plus 7. Change it into a different form. Y minus 4 equals 2x plus 14. And then I could move the 4 on the other side. Y equals 2x by adding 4 plus 18. And I've got y equals mx plus b. The problem with this is that my y-intercept is so high. So we could find ordered pairs that work for this. I do know that my slope is 2. So if I can get 1 point on here, I can use my slope and go from there. What is convenient about this form is it's already in slope-intercept form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So if I'm looking at what y1 is, my point is going to have 4. That's my y1. My x1, see how it says plus 7? Well, I want minus. So it's the same as minus negative 7. So my x1 is negative 7. I also know that the slope is 2. So there's a point, negative 7, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. Negative 7, 4. A slope of 2 is up 2 to the right 1, up 2 to the right 1, or down 2 to the left 1. And I got my line. Now over here, if we had gone with slope-intercept form, we could find ordered pair solutions that work. And if I plug negative 7 in, I get 2 times negative 7. Negative 14 plus 18 gives you 4. So it also works even if I plug it in here. So multiple ways to graph that line. What is an equation of the line with a slope of 3 and a y-intercept of negative 5? If I'm going straight to slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, all I need is the slope, which is 3, x, plus my y-intercept is negative 5, so it'll be y equals 3x minus 5. You just plug it in, y-intercept and slope. In our next problem, what is an equation of the line through this point with a slope of 2? You could do this one of two ways. We could take y equals mx plus b, and we can plug in our slope, and we can plug in x and y, and then solve for what b is. Y is 5, slope is 2, x is negative 1. So I plugged in my point for the x and the y and plugged in the slope, and I can solve this for the y-intercept. So I get 5 equals negative 2 plus b. Adding 2, I get 7 is b. So I know what b is. I go back to y equals 2x, because my slope was 2, plus 7. That's the equation of my line. Now I could do point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, in which case I'm plugging in y1 and x1 and plugging in the slope. So it'd be y minus 5 equals my slope of 2 times x minus a negative 1, which would be plus 1. And that's another equation. This equation's in point slope form. I could distribute the 2 in, and then add 5, and see that I get the exact same there. So you could use point slope form, you could use slope-intercept form. It won't make a difference. Okay, I want you to try to do these two problems. Pause the movie, do those on your own, and then press play when you are finished. Let's look at A. What is an equation of a line with a slope of negative 1/2 and a y-intercept of 2? So I'm going to go straight to slope-intercept form. Negative 1/2 x plus 2. That's A. For B, if I plug that point in, I would get 4 equals negative 3 times negative 1 plus B. That allows me to solve for B. You get B is 1. Your equation then is y equals negative 3x plus 1. You can also use point slope form and get the same equation. Here's another classic. First, you have to find the slope. It needs to go through both of these points, so the first thing you do is you find the slope between these 2 points. And that is change in y over change in x. I like to circle the y's and pick a direction. So I'm going to do negative 5 minus 3 over 11 minus negative 5. So this is going to give me negative 8 over 16, which is negative 1/2. So my slope is negative 1/2. The next thing I need to do is pick a point, because I'm going to put it in either point slope form, or I'm going to just use y equals mx plus b and go from there. I'm going to use that point. So I'm going to have negative 5 as my x, 3 as my y. And I know my slope is negative 1/2. So I plug those in, I get 3 equals negative 1/2 times negative 5 plus b. This allows me to solve for my y-intercept of b. So this is going to give me 5/2 plus b. This is going to go 2 with 1/2 plus b, so I minus 2.5. And I get positive 1/2. So my y-intercept is 1/2. So I go back to my slope-intercept form. Y equals my slope, negative 1/2 x, plus my y-intercept of 1/2. And this last slide is to remind you that every vertical line has a slope of 0, an equation x equals 2. Every horizontal line has vertical line slope of undefined, horizontal line slope of 0, and this has an equation of y equals 4. If I combine those together, I get 2, 4, and you can see the point where they intersect. What are the equations for horizontal vertical lines going through 4, negative 3? My x is 4, my y is 3, so it'd be x equals 4. And x equals 4 has a slope undefined. Y equals negative 3 would be my horizontal line, and that has a slope of 0. Okay, that's all for this movie.